The day I buried my father, my stepmother, Sarah, stood by his grave, leaned in and whispered, "You killed him." She wanted everyone to think the tears in my eyes were just for my dad. She was wrong. They were for the man I believe she murdered. She had a plan to steal his $800,000 life insurance, but she never planned on me, or the secrets her own son left behind in a rusted lockbox. Before I get into this insane story, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming. To really get how we ended up here, you have to go back a few years. My name is Alex. After my mum died, my dad, a man whose heart was almost too big for his own good, fell hard for Sarah. On the surface, she was perfect, charming, always doting on him, beautiful. She made my dad happy, so I really tried to like her. But there was always this distance, like I was watching them through a pane of glass. Her smile never, ever reached her eyes. Her son, Leo, who was a few years younger than me, came with the package. He was a quiet, timid kid who just blended into the wallpaper, always watching, always listening. We were never close, but we had this unspoken understanding, the kind you get when you both feel like permanent guests in your own home. Sarah's love for my dad was this grand, sweeping performance, but her affection for her own son felt rehearsed, totally hollow. Everything started to fall apart about a year ago. My dad, who'd always been healthy as an ox, started getting sick. First, it was just being tired all the time. Then came the dizzy spells and horrible stomach pains. His doctors were stumped. They ran what felt like 1,000,000 tests, but every single one came back inconclusive. They just labeled it a mystery illness. And through it all, Sarah was the perfect, devoted wife. She took over everything. She prepared all his meals, gave him his medications, and managed all his doctor's appointments. She insisted it was too much for me, and she slowly and deliberately pushed me away. If I called, she'd say he was asleep. If I came to visit, she'd claim I was making him tired. She brushed off my worries as if I was some dramatic, paranoid kid. "Alex, you're not helping," she'd say, her voice dripping with fake sympathy. "He needs to rest, not feed off your anxiety." As my dad got weaker, Leo got quieter. The whole house, which used to be filled with my dad's booming laugh, became suffocatingly silent. Then I got the phone call I'd been dreading. My dad was gone. The official cause of death was complications from an undiagnosed illness. It felt too neat, too easy. At the funeral, while I was standing there, completely numb, Sarah leaned in. That's when she spit those words at me. "You killed him." In front of our friends and family, she claimed my constant stress had broken his spirit. She was painting me as the ungrateful child who'd burdened a sick man. In that 1 second, my grief turned into ice-cold certainty. She did this. Her grieving widow act fell apart almost instantly. The speed with which she filed the claim for my father's $800,000 life insurance policy made my stomach turn. I found out she'd manipulated him into signing papers months before, making her the sole beneficiary and cutting me out. She told him it was to simplify things and swore she'd take care of me. Of course, a death under unusual circumstances triggers an investigation, so the payout wasn't immediate. But Sarah wasn't worried. She was arrogantly confident that the money was as good as hers. Just weeks later, another tragedy. Leo was dead. An accident at a quarry, they said. But I knew in my bones it was no accident. Sarah's grief this time was loud, public, and theatrical. I found out later that Leo had a small life insurance policy his biological father had set up. Sarah was the beneficiary. It was the same sick story all over again. 2 deaths. 2 insurance policies. 1 person benefiting, that was it. I couldn't let her get away with it. I emptied my savings and hired a private investigator, a retired cop named Dave. I laid out the whole story. He listened, his face giving nothing away, and warned me that a gut feeling isn't evidence. But he saw something in my eyes and agreed to dig into Sarah's past and her finances. He told me that people who do these things are often sloppy and leave a financial trail. While Dave started combing through records, Sarah began purging the house of my dad and Leo. She wanted to move on, she said, and told me to clear out Leo's room. As I was packing up his life, comic books, clothes, posters, my hand hit a loose floorboard under his bed. My heart started pounding. I pried it up and there it was. A small, rusted metal lockbox. This was it. This was the moment. I knew with every part of me that the answers I needed were locked inside that box. If you've ever had a feeling like that, a gut-wrenching certainty that you're about to find a truth that will change everything. Then stick with me for the rest of this story. My hands were shaking as I smuggled the lockbox out of that house. I had no idea how to open it, so I took it straight to a locksmith, my mind racing. What if it was just kid stuff? What if Sarah was right all along, and I really was just paranoid? When the lock finally clicked open, I couldn't breathe. It wasn't full of teenage treasures. It was full of proof. Right on top was a beat-up leather diary. It was Leo's. Page after page was filled with his neat, cramped handwriting. He'd been writing down everything. He wrote about how scared he was of his own mother, her coldness, the way she obsessed over my father's money. Then the entries got darker. He described watching Sarah crush up pills and mix them into my dad's food. He noted the dates, the times, and what she'd served him. He wrote about how she'd swap out his real prescriptions for other pills she kept hidden. Leo was terrified. He knew exactly what she was doing, but he was a prisoner in his own home, too scared to say anything. The last few entries were bone-chilling. He discovered that his mum had recently taken out a new insurance policy on him. His last words in the diary were, "I think I'm next." Under the diary was a small USB drive. I plugged it into my laptop, my hand trembling so badly I could barely do it. It was full of audio files. Leo had been secretly recording her. I clicked play. Sarah's voice, cold and ruthless, filled the room. It was a phone call. She was complaining to someone about how long my dad was taking to die. I heard her say clear as day, "The doctors are useless. I'll have to speed it up myself. For $800,000 I can handle it." The next file was a confrontation between Leo and Sarah. I could hear the absolute terror in his voice as he whispered, "Mom, what are you doing to him?" Her reply is a sound that will haunt me forever. A venomous hiss. "You will keep your mouth shut if you know what's good for you. Don't for a second think you're not replaceable." This was it. Premeditated murder and the threats that almost certainly led to Leo's death. This wasn't a gut feeling anymore. It was irrefutable proof. I immediately called Dave, the PI, and we took everything straight to the police. The lockbox, the diary, the recordings. It was the key that unlocked a full-scale homicide investigation. Sarah's perfectly constructed world came crashing down. Armed with the evidence from the lockbox, the authorities got a warrant to exhume my father's body. The new detailed autopsy and toxicology reports confirmed what Leo's diary laid out. He'd been systematically poisoned over several months. Sarah was arrested. Seeing her face on the news, stripped of that charming mask and twisted in pure rage, is something I will never forget. The trial was a long, grueling process. Her defense team tried to paint me as a liar, a vindictive stepchild making it all up to get the inheritance. But they couldn't argue with the toxicology reports. They couldn't argue with the mountain of debt the PI had uncovered. And most of all, they couldn't argue with the sound of her own voice, calmly plotting murder on those recordings. The jury found her guilty. Guilty of the first-degree murder of my father and guilty of murdering her own son. 2 consecutive life sentences, no chance of parole. The insurance money was another long fight. The payout was frozen the moment Sarah was arrested. My lawyer explained something called the Slayer Statute, a law that says a murderer can't profit from their crime. But it wasn't automatic. After her conviction, we had to go through a whole separate legal process with the insurance company. Eventually, faced with a murder conviction, they released the $800,000 to me, my father's only living heir. I made sure every penny of Leo's smaller policy was donated to a charity for abused children. It was the only way I could think to honor him. It was never about the money. It was about justice. Justice for my kind, trusting dad, and for Leo, the quiet, scared boy who ended up being the bravest person I've ever known. He was a silent victim, but in the end, his voice was the one that finally brought a monster down. And I finally have peace. Have you ever had a gut feeling that something was terribly wrong, a feeling that no one else believed? Share your story in the comments. And please don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice.